in its death throes, the mega state is going to make a lot of mess. And the externalities from that are going to be difficult to navigate through.
Hi, I'm Nick Gillespie with Reason TV, and today we're sitting down with Louis Rossetto, the co-founder of Wired and the co-recipient of the first ever Lanny Friedlander Award that Reason has given out. Thanks for talking to us, Louis.
It's a pleasure.
This is the 20th anniversary of the founding of Wired. Your first issue was January 1993. Talk a little bit about, when you look back, what did you guys get right? What did you get wrong about the future?
It's hard to cast your mind back to that time, 1993. We were trying to raise the money at the end of the Bush administration, right? And the first Bush administration. And there were the number of computers that were connected to the internet were in the low millions. And we came out and we said, we launched in January 1993, and we came out and we said that there's a digital revolution happening, and it was going to change everything. And the people who were making it happen were the most powerful people on the planet. They're the people who were creating and using digital technology. And it wasn't the priests and the pundits and the politicians and the generals who were making positive change. It was these people. And that meta story was absolutely spot on. So in lots of ways, we were a mirror. We put up a mirror to a group of people who had been obscure, if not just ignored. And for other people, it was sort of like a window into a new world, which they didn't know about. If you were reading the New York Times, you had no idea what was going on. And we had a joke that the New York Times, for years after we launched, had a continual series of articles that they put on the front page and other pages, which were essentially internet threat or menace.
Right.
Where they just could not deal with the changes that were going on.
Do you feel, and I mean this is a banal question, so I should withdraw it before even asking it, but has the potential of the internet, has it come through, or where is it, like, where have we still not even tapped the beginning of kind of that world of, and it's not about computers, it's really about interconnectivity and the ability to kind of envision something and then act to make that real. Are we proceeding apace? Are we going too slow? What are the sticking points and what are the missed opportunities?
I'm guessing we have arrived at a point where we can't understand what's really going on anymore. So the phenomena was a revolution, a digital revolution, and it wasn't about computers. It was about brains being connected to brains through digital communication, aided by these brain appliances we called computers. And the value of those connections, the analogy is like a fax machine. So one fax machine is useless. Two fax machines start to have value. Right. When you have lots of them, the value of the fax machines is logarithmic. It's not linear anymore.
And I'm kind of excited that we will have to explain what a fax machine is to people under about 40 at this point.
I remember seeing my first fax come out of the machine from a guy that was sending. I was in Amsterdam. He was sending from California. I was just stunned. I said, "Whoa." Yeah. But at this point, there are 3 billion people connected to the internet, which is still only less than half of all humanity. And at the same time, there are probably multiple times that number of machines connected to the internet. Right. And Teilhard de Chardin talked about the globe enrobing itself, making itself a brain out of electronic or electric technology, he called it at the time. And I have the sense that already there's a certain level of consciousness that we can't perceive anymore, any more than fish understand they're swimming in the sea. That things are happening without our control or knowledge.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, because we're verging kind of into singularity territory, and it can be
I don't want to go there.
I
don't want to go there.
Well, and I'm sure that you, as a teenager, if you would have thought that you, as an adult, you'd be quoting a Jesuit priest about the noosphere and whatnot, you'd be like, where did my life go wrong? But I mean, this is really what you're talking about here is not a phenomenon that is either good or bad. It is simply the medium. Yeah.
It is. It's the universe. The universe was always out of our control, and it's always been unknowable. Mm-hmm. The fact is now that we're creating our own evolutionary next step, and since we're agents of evolution ourselves.
Right.
And I think what's arriving is again unknowable as we move into it.
But let's think about this in a kind of institutional or framework sense. We don't know where we're going to end up, but clearly there are things that we can do that are probably better or worse, right, in terms of decision making. And what are the types of large framework or institutional decisions we should be trying to impress upon our leaders or ignoring from our leaders? How do we maximize the potential to create more and kind of a post-scarcity world? And what are the things that can really screw things up?
Yeah, well, we've been talking about this sort of meta environment that we're operating in, but nevertheless, we still operate in it. And I guess one of the regrets I have for Wired is that throughout the time that I was there and the digital operations we did, we tried to focus not on politics and on government, but on those agents of change and those tools and instruments which could make a better world. And I think to some degree we had a certain amount of success with that. We had Clinton say that the end of the era of big government was over, and I think there was a lot of focus on the possibilities of creating a new future for ourselves by ourselves.
Right, and it really did seem that throughout the 90s at least that, and this is in the wake of the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War, the rise of computer
end
technology.
Of history,
and the idea though that politics wasn't going to matter as much.
Right.
And of course that changed, I guess that's always a dream, but then after 9/11 and whatnot, it seemed like politics kind of expanded now, and we seem to be in an era now where politics is very much in the way because the way the government spends, the way it regulates, it gets in the way of everything.
Well, it always did, but I think it's even more present in our life because the media, the remnants of big media, tend to focus on it, and because they're advocates of it in general, it becomes the major story that they talk about. I'm not sure it's the real story. I mean, the government has always been dysfunctional, and it's always been the producer of unintended consequences, and it's always, made messes of all sorts of stuff. And now it's still doing the same thing now. I don't think much has changed. What happened after the 90s was this sort of regression into the kind of primitive political division that might have characterized the 19th century, the kind of vitriolic enemies or the vitriol that you throw at your enemies,
and
has become institutionalized.
And it's interesting because this is something we read a lot about at Reason. Fewer people care about politics in the sense that fewer people are willing to identify as liberal or conservative, Republican or Democrat, but the people who do, the dead enders, are like much more fiercely committed to that as a primary identity.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a normal person, why would you want to engage in the mud battles that are going on with basically psychopathic people? People who are involved in politics by definition, going back to Wilhelm Reich, are emotional cripples of some sort that are working out their psychosis on the public at large. So why would a normal person want to associate with that?
And let's be clear, Wilhelm Reich understood psychopathology from the inside as well.
Well, he was an expert. Let's put it that way. But to go back to the beginning of the question, it's like what? So that was what went wrong. I think people devolved into politics again, where they started to step out of it. The message, though, is still the same, and maybe even more pressing, because the digital revolution has been marching through society and demolishing institutions left and right that have been essential in lots of ways, whether it's education or whether it's the court system or the police or whatever. They've been developed over centuries, and they're no longer relevant, or they're obsolete, or they're counterproductive, or they're destructive. And so there's a real need for something else. And what that something else is, and also an outgrowth of the digital revolution, is for citizens, humans, to recapture the civic space from those institutions that have taken it over in the 20th century for themselves. And if there is a future, and a better future, it's going to be because individuals and the family and their institutions groups that they work with at whatever level, decide to take power back and work directly to make that better world.
Are there examples that you can point to? You know, is YouTube that kind of space? Is that a new public sphere that is more participatory? You know, is Whole Foods an improvement over, you know, an old style supermarket? Or what are the types of demonstration projects that are out there that kind of get your energy up?
Well, I mean, if you just go back to the beginning of this discussion where there were a few million computers connected to the internet, now 3 billion people, I, at the time, was saying that there was a discussion that was beginning, that was voices could be heard out there in, not for everybody, 3 billion people aren't going to hear everything, but there would be groupings of them that would hear things. Dialogue would go on. There would be back and forth about it. New consensuses would evolve and disperse and evolve and create and coalesce, and a new kind of consciousness would come out of it that was consensual and even not maybe even below the level of a decision, but nevertheless it was moving things in a direction. And I think that that's really going on. So I mean, and it is tweets, it's YouTube, it's all the places where Instagram, it's all the places where you could have, for want of a better word, a democratic kind of discussion where it's unimpeded by the gatekeepers in the media. That's an amazing step forward, and that's also gives me hope that the gatekeepers in the media are on their way out in general, because there's a Rossetto law of media, which is it's a zero-sum game. If you're looking at Twitter or YouTube, you're not watching NBC or reading the New York Times, and so you're leeching attention from them, which is the thing that they need the most.
Right.
And in that rediversion of attention, you start to have a different kind of political or idea environment than you had before, than you have now.
There's a real future orientation, not a kind of bland utopianism, but in your life's work in Wired and whatnot. Talk a little bit, you've got kids. Do you, when you think about the future, do you expect that their future will be brighter than yours was, as yours was brighter than your parents and grandparents? Or are you, you know, do you wake up with fear and trembling? Like what's going to screw it all up?
I look at my own children, and I think they're capable of finding their way in the world and succeeding no matter what. I worry that the environment that they're going to be operating in is going to be, excuse me, a lot more challenging than it was for me.
In what way? Because
well, I just think that in its death throes, the mega state is going to make a lot of mess, and it's going to be hard to navigate. It's going to just the externalities from that are going to be difficult to navigate through. So I think they have the critical facilities to understand what's happening, which is already a step forward. Being in touch with reality is an important part of being able to survive in an evolutionary level. But I think that the challenges are going to be, they're going to have more challenges than they need to have. If people had been more focused on, you know, doing the right thing now.
How confident are you that we are in kind of the death throes of the megastate, or is that the human condition that at any, you know, kind of slice of time that defines a human lifetime? Are we always at the end of the megastate, or
I think that,
are we really broaching, you know, a historical limit here?
I think that it's not as if the state's going to go away any more than churches went away. I just think that their hold on imagination and their the authority that's given to them by the public at large, by humans and citizens, is going to diminish. That they are proving themselves incapable, and there are other alternatives out there. And I think part of the challenge for media, for you guys or anyone else, is to start telling the other story. Because as long as people think that they have to pay attention to these guys that are vibrating in Washington, that the other parts of the story which really deserve attention and which really make a difference, that's the other parts of the story of what's going on in the world today. That's the real story. And yet we're obsessed, like some kind of a moth heading toward a fire, with another kind of story that's not the right story, and it's not a good story to try to internalize.
Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for talking to us. Louis Rossetto, co-founder of Wired with Jane Metcalfe, co-recipient of the first annual Reason Media Lifetime Achievement Award, the Lanny Friedlander Prize, again with Jane Metcalfe, co-founder of Chocolate. Thanks so much for talking to Reason.
It's been a pleasure.
For Reason TV, I'm Nick Gillespie.